Maya slid into seat 12F, her backpack snug against her shoulders. On the surface, she looked like any other 12-year-old headed to Denver for a routine school trip. Headphones dangled around her neck, a tablet balanced carefully on her lap. Passengers glanced at her briefly, nodding the focused expression that seemed too mature for her age, but quickly dismissed it. They didn't know, and they wouldn't, that Maya had been part of a clandestine youth program for children with exceptional aptitude. For years, she had trained in secret, learning crisis protocols, coded communication, and advanced situational awareness. Few even in her family fully understood the extent of her preparation. As Flight 407 taxied down the runway, Maya's eyes scanned the cabin instinctively. She noted every detail, the placement of emergency equipment, the positions of flight attendants, the behavior of passengers near the aisles. To her, everything was data. Her fingers drummed lightly on the tablet, more out of habit than boredom, sending subtle signals to the embedded smartwatch hidden beneath her jacket sleeve. She had spent years memorizing emergency codes, simulating hijack scenarios, and practicing calm in high-pressure situations. Today, all of that training might become real, though she didn't yet know how immediate the threat would be. Most passengers were oblivious, some chatting about weekend plans, others scrolling endlessly through social media. A mother tried to calm a restless toddler in the row ahead, unaware that chaos could strike in a fraction of a moment. Flight attendants moved with practiced ease, distributing snacks and answering questions, blissfully unaware that one of their youngest passengers was not ordinary. Maya's heartbeat remained steady, though a small tension lingered in her chest. She had trained for this, rehearsed the mental drills, but no simulation could replicate the weight of actual responsibility. Outside, clouds streaked across the sky, sunlight bouncing off the wing of the aircraft as the engines roared to life. The plane lifted, and a soft vibration pulsed through the cabin. Maya adjusted her carefully, then subtly activated her smartwatch. Tiny indicators blinked on the screen, feeding information to a secure military network monitoring airspace. Somewhere in a hangar miles above the clouds, 2 F-22 Raptor pilots would soon notice her signal, a rare, child-specific call sign, Echo 12F. It was an alert designed to be recognized only by trained military personnel. She took a deep breath, letting her small hands relax on her lap. No one suspected that beneath her unassuming exterior lay hours of strategy and crisis training. Most children at 12 worried about math homework, friends, or the next school project. Maya thought about evacuation protocols, hostage negotiation simulations, and coded communication. The juxtaposition made her appear almost surreal, like a character out of a movie, except this was real. Every glance, every movement could matter. Every observation could mean life or death. The flight attendants continued their rounds, exchanging smiles and jokes with passengers. An elderly man struggled to stow his carry-on, and Maya offered a polite nod, nodding the obstruction near the aisle. Each minute passed with a strange blend of normalcy and hidden tension. She whispered quietly to herself, a habit from training, rehearsing sequences that might be needed. Her eyes flicked toward the cockpit occasionally, noting the pilot's calm demeanor and the flight attendants' routine efficiency. To them, she was just a kid in 12F, but in reality, she was a node in a sophisticated web, prepared to trigger action if necessary. Maya's mind briefly wandered to her family. Her parents had supported her secret training, though they only understood fragments. They had no idea she might be called upon in such a real-world scenario. For years, she had been the quiet observer, the one practicing codes and procedures while others played. Today, those hours of preparation would test every lesson she had ever learned. Her pulse quickened, not from fear, but from readiness. The plane leveled off, the hum of the engines filling the cabin. Outside, the sky was a vast canvas of clouds and sunlight, serene and unassuming. Inside, tension simmered invisibly, known only to Maya. She straightened in her seat, checked her smartwatch once more, and tapped a discrete sequence, an alert signal to military command. Somewhere above or nearby, pilots would respond. For the passengers around her, she was just a quiet girl in 12F, but for those who understood the code, she was far more than that. Maya's seat 12F was ready. Halfway through the flight, Maya felt a subtle vibration against her wrist. Her smartwatch pulsed, an anomaly that only she could detect. The signal wasn't random, it was the first indication of an emerging threat. Her eyes narrowed, scanning the cabin in quiet precision. The hijackers were already in motion, though their movements were nearly imperceptible to untrained eyes. Every instinct she had honed through years of secret drills now kicked into action. Calmly, she tapped a coded sequence into her watch, sending a silent alert to military command. Her fingers moved quickly but effortlessly, each tap measured, deliberate, and precise. Miles away in a hangar where 2 F-22 Raptor pilots monitored civilian air traffic, the alert blared through the secure system. Captain, seasoned and alert, leaned forward instinctively. "What is that?" he muttered. Lieutenant's eyes widened as the code materialized on the monitor. Echo 12F, the call sign was rare, so rare it was almost mythical. Only a select group of youth operatives, trained under a highly classified program, had ever been assigned it. To receive it in real life was unprecedented, and didn't hesitate. Training took over instinctively. Within seconds, engines roared as the F-22s streaked into the sky, responding to a silent call from a 12-year-old girl. Back on Flight 407, the cabin continued in oblivious routine. Passengers laughed softly, read magazines, or slept lightly, unaware that the girl in 12F had already begun a delicate operation. Her calm exterior betrayed nothing of the tension coiling in her chest. She scanned the aisle. A man near the rear carried a suspicious bag, his movements synchronized unnaturally with another passenger's glance. This was no coincidence. She whispered a sequence into her watch, sending an encrypted update. Positions confirmed. Phase 1 initiated. The pulse of the alert flowed up the chain of command, reaching those who understood her code perfectly. The hijackers, confident and prepared, underestimated her. They assumed she was just a child, distracted and harmless. Every move they made she recorded silently, mentally adjusting for risk. Flight attendants moved past, oblivious to the subtle hand signals she sent. Maya's mind moved at a speed that no ordinary passenger could perceive. She planned contingencies, prepped escape routes, and calculated timing with terrifying precision for someone her age. Outside, the F-22s closed in, invisible guardians yet to make contact, waiting for the precise cue. Time stretched as the minutes ticked by. The hijackers whispered, consulting phones and maps, yet made no move against her. Maya let her eyes soften occasionally, masking awareness with a casual glance at the window. Her smartwatch pulsed again, a discreet confirmation from the pilots that they had received her initial alert. The military network had recognized the rare call sign and began calculating intercept vectors, forming a protective aerial corridor around the aircraft. Inside the cabin, a nervous murmur traveled among passengers. Maya's training told her to act subtly, to keep the hijackers unaware of any threat to their plans. She smiled faintly, a soft reassurance, then returned to her strategic calculations. Every detail mattered: the position of the galley cart, the location of tray tables, the tilt of a seat. Each element was a piece of her carefully constructed mental map. Her calm, collected demeanor was a shield for those around her. Miles above the clouds, the F-22s approached, engines humming a barely perceptible warning. Checked coordinates. Flight 407 was aligned perfectly with the planned intercept pattern. Echo 12F had already predicted the optimal timing for action. Exhaled softly, recognizing the precision and trust implicit in the signal. Somewhere below, a 12-year-old girl was orchestrating a complex aerial response without anyone suspecting her role. Maya's pulse remained steady, but adrenaline surged through her. She had trained for simulations, but reality always carried weight no exercise could replicate. A subtle shift in the cabin, the scraping of a chair, a hushed cough reminded her that every second counted. The F-22s would act soon. Her code had already set the military's precision into motion. The fate of hundreds now rested on her calm mind and swift fingers. Tapping her watch again, she sent a final preemptive signal. Readiness confirmed, awaiting engagement. Somewhere above or beyond, pilots prepared to move. The ordinary flight had already become extraordinary, all because the girl in 12F knew exactly what to do. And when above the clouds, 2 F-22 Raptors sliced through the clear blue sky, engines vibrating with controlled fury. Captain and lieutenant had received the rare alert. Echo 12F both understood the magnitude. It wasn't a simulation. A 12-year-old girl trained in classified emergency protocols had signaled for help. The code was unmistakable, precise, and urgent. Tightened his grip on the controls, eyes locked on the radar. The coordinates from Maya's watch appeared almost instantly. Flight 407 was in motion, but a subtle danger had already crept. Every second now counted, and the pilots knew they had to act with extreme precision. Below, Flight 407 cruised at 30,000 feet. Inside, passengers remained unaware, engrossed in movies, naps, and quiet conversations. Yet Maya sat in seat 12F, an unassuming girl whose calm exterior hid a mind operating at a tactical level far beyond her age. Her fingers tapped lightly on the smartwatch, each sequence conveying complex instructions to the F-22 pilots: altitude adjustments, intercept angles, and speed variations. Outside, the military jets responded, invisible but lethal, forming a protective wedge around the civilian aircraft. The hijackers, confident in their plan, remained unaware of the invisible forces converging on them. One fumbled with a phone, another scanned the cabin suspiciously, yet none could detect the orchestrator in plain sight. Maya observed every twitch, every glance, every movement. She shifted slightly, positioning herself near the galley, a calculated choice to maximize visibility without revealing her awareness. Her calm voice whispered instructions to the flight attendants under the guise of casual conversation, guiding them toward subtle safety measures. Adjusted the F-22's formation as the coded updates continued. The Raptor pilots had been trained to read these alerts, to understand the timing and intent behind a child operative's signals. Every nuance mattered. A slight tilt of the plane, a soft tap on a watch could mean the difference between life and death. Exchanged a glance with, "This is unprecedented." Nodded silently, no words necessary. The precision of the code, the trust it demanded, was unlike anything either pilot had experienced. Inside the cabin, Maya continued her discreet maneuvers. She scanned the overhead compartments, noting the placement of emergency equipment and personal belongings that could be used as improvised barricades. Her calculations moved faster than anyone could perceive. A misstep by the hijackers could trigger panic, but she had already mentally rehearsed each scenario. The pulse of adrenaline remained steady, focused, as she tapped another sequence into her watch. The pilots above adjusted their positioning accordingly, maintaining a protective perimeter without alarming the passengers. The hijackers whispered among themselves, unaware that their carefully planned operation was already being countered. Every movement they made, Maya tracked silently. She adjusted her seating, her posture, her gestures, subtly influencing their actions without their knowledge. Each micro-movement of her body transmitted information to the pilots above. Position confirmed, threat level assessed, prepare for engagement. The cabin, to an outsider, remained ordinary. To her, it was a live battlefield where every decision had consequences. Suddenly, the plane shuddered slightly as turbulence struck, a minor gust against the fuselage. Maya's mind registered it immediately, factoring the effect on both the hijackers and the surrounding passengers. Outside, the F-22s compensated instantly, adjusting vectors to maintain perfect alignment. Felt a surge of respect for the young operative who had orchestrated this invisible coordination. "She's incredible," murmured under his breath, a 12-year-old girl. "Running this like a seasoned strategist." The next minutes were a delicate dance. The hijackers grew increasingly uneasy, sensing something, but not knowing what. Maya maintained her calm, sending incremental updates while guiding passengers towards subtle safe zones. Every tap, every glance, every decision contributed to the precision of the F-22's approach. Above, the fighters mirrored her instructions flawlessly. Below, the cabin remained tense but orderly. And all the while, Mayan 12F was the hidden fulcrum balancing life, danger, and survival. For the first time, the pilots prepared for full engagement. The signals were clear, the operative on board was ready. The coordination between girl and jets had reached a critical point. Exhaled slowly, adjusting the throttles, checked radar, confirming positions. Somewhere inside that unassuming cabin, Maya's calm determination was about to meet the external precision of military power. The sky had never held such a secret alliance, nor such silent tension. And Flight 407 had no idea it was moments away from a coordinated rescue. Maya shifted slightly in her seat, her eyes calm but sharp. The cabin of Flight 407 was filled with the hum of engines, muffled conversations, and the faint clatter of service carts. To any casual observer, everything appeared normal. Yet Maya's mind was a whirlpool of calculations, risk assessments, and tactical predictions. She had already identified the hijackers' positions, their patterns, and the small inconsistencies that revealed their true intent. Every subtle glance they cast, every twitch of their hands, was noted and logged in her mental map. She glanced toward the rear, noting the taller man's constant scanning of the cabin. He seemed to be counting rows, measuring distances. His companion near the galley moved subtly, attempting to manipulate items on the service cart without drawing attention. Maya's pulse stayed steady. She whispered quietly into her smartwatch, a stream of coded updates flowing invisibly to the pilots above. Tiny pings transmitted coordinates, threat levels, and calculated responses. Somewhere in the sky, 2 F-22 pilots adjusted their approach in real time, guided by the instincts of a 12-year-old girl. Maya's strategy was simple yet precise: maintain calm, misdirect the hijackers, and keep passengers safe. She offered casual gestures, accidental movements that nudged passengers slightly away from danger zones, all while keeping her voice neutral. Her soft comments to nearby passengers disguised tactical instructions. "Could you help me reach that overhead bin?" she asked, subtly moving a potentially obstructive adult away from a critical pathway. The hijackers didn't notice. Their attention was divided. Every misstep they made was a step closer to their defeat. Meanwhile, the F-22s maintained a silent, invisible perimeter. The pilots monitored every micro-movement, relying on Maya's coded alerts to anticipate every turn, every adjustment of the plane. Adjusted throttle and altitude, ensuring that their jets could respond instantly if the hijackers attempted a risky maneuver. "She's guiding us like a pro," muttered, eyes fixed on the radar. "And she's 12. The sheer precision and trust implied in the code were astounding. Back in the cabin, Maya subtly adjusted her seating, positioning herself so that she could monitor both the aisle and the galley. She observed the hijacker's tiny tells, the way one shifted weight onto a certain leg, the tilt of a wrist, a quick glance toward an exit. Each observation allowed her to preempt their moves. She whispered another coded sequence, Phase 2, Containment Readiness. Above, the F-22s shifted formation slightly, their powerful engines barely audible, yet their presence ensured that the hijackers had fewer options. Passengers around her remained unaware of the invisible orchestration occurring just feet away. Some whispered nervously, some fidgeted with phones, others attempted casual conversation to mask fear. Maya smiled faintly at a young boy across the aisle who clutched his mother's hand. "Everything's fine," she murmured softly, projecting calm that flowed into the surrounding passengers. The illusion of normalcy was critical. Panic could be disastrous. Composure was her greatest weapon. A sudden scrape of a chair caused a tiny ripple of tension. Maya adjusted, intercepting the minor chaos before it escalated. Her smartwatch pulsed again, a silent update confirming the pilot's awareness of her next intended moves. The hijacker's own indecision began to surface, subtle hesitation that Maya had predicted. Each fraction of a second gained the advantage, and she capitalized on it with meticulous precision. Time became a measured cadence: watch pulse, observe behavior, issue signal, adjust formation. The cabin was a living chessboard, the passengers unwitting pieces, the hijackers the opposing pawns. And at the center of it all, in seat 12F, Maya remained the calm, invisible queen, calculating, anticipating, directing the course of events. Outside, the F-22s mirrored her intent, forming an unseen shield around the plane. For the first time, the hijackers sensed hesitation in their plan. They didn't know why, but something invisible had already begun to dismantle their control. Maya straightened, took a slow breath, and whispered another coded instruction: hold, prepare for next phase. The moment had arrived when subtle tension would transition into decisive action. Flight 407 was now poised on a knife's edge, and all eyes, seen and unseen, were waiting for the next move. Above Flight 407, the two F-22 Raptors maintained a precise, deadly formation, engines humming with barely perceptible intensity. Captain and lieutenant studied the radar, confirming the positions of the plane and the surrounding airspace. Every vector, every altitude adjustment was calculated with flawless precision. The rare call sign Echo 12F had alerted them to a 12-year-old operative orchestrating a response from inside the cabin. They had never anticipated a child would control a real-world intervention, but the signal was clear, calculated, and trustworthy. The pilot's trust in the code was absolute. Inside the cabin, Maya's calm demeanor masked the storm of activity she was coordinating. Every glance she cast, every micro-movement of her hands, communicated hidden instructions to the pilots above. The hijackers remained unaware, moving cautiously, assessing the cabin for potential threats they didn't understand. Maya subtly nudged passengers away from critical pathways under the guise of casual conversation. "Would you mind helping me adjust that bag?" Each adjustment was deliberate, shifting the environment to reduce risk and enhance strategic advantage. Adjusted the F-22's formation, carefully aligning their protective wedge around the aircraft. The jets moved as extensions of Maya's intent, responding instantaneously to her coded signals. Small, precise maneuvers created a psychological pressure on the hijackers, an unseen force they could neither anticipate nor counter. The children's operative code included contingencies for every likely movement. As Maya tapped another sequence into her watch, the F-22s executed subtle altitude changes and adjustments, positioning themselves as a silent shield that passengers could not see, but that effectively controlled the sky around them. The hijackers whispered, their nervousness growing. Something about the cabin felt off. They could sense constraint, hesitation, and unpredictability, but could not pinpoint the source. Maya's small stature and innocent appearance camouflaged her extraordinary capabilities. She leaned slightly, observed their behaviors, and tapped another coded sequence. Threat assessment updated, execute containment. The pilots interpreted the signals flawlessly. Above, the Raptors adjusted their alignment slightly, a maneuver that would restrict potential escape routes without alarming the passengers. In the cabin, tension mounted subtly. Passengers shifted nervously in their seats, unaware that they were now indirectly under military protection. Flight attendants continued their routine, oblivious to the invisible forces at work. Maya maintained a serene exterior while internally calculating every possible scenario. Her gaze flicked to the emergency exits, the galley, and the aisles. Every item, every movement was evaluated as a potential risk or tool. Her whispers into the smartwatch relayed minute-by-minute updates, distances, timings, and predictions, allowing and to anticipate actions the hijackers might take next. The pilots, now fully engaged, executed precise maneuvers. Their jets formed a dynamic perimeter, subtly creating a virtual cage around Flight 407. Any attempt to deviate would be instantly detected and potential responses were pre-programmed. Glanced at, admiration clear in his eyes. "She's directing this entire operation," he muttered, nodded, jaw tight. 12 years old, and she's got more situational awareness than most adults in these simulations. Maya sent another coded signal. Phase 2 initiated, passenger safety priority, hijacker movement restricted. Inside, she subtly guided passengers toward slightly safer positions, all without alarming them. Every tap of her fingers on the watch was a command, every small nod a confirmation. The cabin remained outwardly normal, but the invisible tension was palpable. The hijackers fidgeted, their confidence waning. Seconds stretched into long, strategic moments. Outside, the F-22s executed minor altitude adjustments and minor banking maneuvers, all synchronized with Maya's coded commands. The invisible network of control, child operative and military pilots had already shifted the balance of power. The hijackers' next move would be anticipated, contained, and countered. Maya remained poised, every decision calm, every thought precise. In seat 12F, she had become the linchpin of the operation, the silent orchestrator of an extraordinary airborne maneuver. Above and below, coordination was flawless. The plane, passengers, and pilots moved as a single system, subtly guided by Maya's quiet genius. Every moment reinforced her training and her courage, and as the first true test of containment approached, Maya's pulse remained steady, ready for the decisive phase. Maya shifted slightly in her seat, eyes calm but alert, scanning the cabin for any subtle changes in the hijackers' behavior. One of them, a tall man near the rear, adjusted his jacket nervously, glancing repeatedly at passengers. His partner near the galley fumbled with a small device, muttering under his breath. Maya observed everything, the tilt of a wrist, the way one foot tapped the floor, the timing of whispered exchanges. Every detail was a signal, and every movement she anticipated. She tapped a coded sequence into her smartwatch, sending a stream of updates to the F-22 pilots above. Positions confirmed. Threat levels rising, her internal note dictated. The pilots responded instantly, adjusting their formation with invisible precision. Captain eyes narrowed as he noted the minor altitude shift of Flight 407. It was subtle, barely perceptible to passengers, but critical for maintaining control. Lieutenant mirrored the maneuver, trusting the coded instructions from the child operative below. The rare call sign, Echo 12F, was no longer a curiosity. It was the operational directive. Somewhere inside that unassuming cabin, a 12-year-old girl was orchestrating the movements of two of the most advanced fighter jets in the world, in perfect synchronization with the threats inside. Inside, Maya continued her subtle maneuvers. She shifted her weight, adjusted her position, and whispered brief instructions to flight attendants who remained unaware of the true significance. Every casual gesture had purpose, nudging a passenger slightly to avoid danger, opening a seat belt subtly to create room, adjusting a tray table to block potential access. Her mind worked in layers, simultaneously calculating trajectories, psychological responses, and spatial dynamics. The hijackers remained unaware of her extraordinary capabilities, assuming the cabin's ordinary appearance reflected the situation's simplicity. Minutes stretched, tension thickening the air. Maya sent another micro-update, hijacker movement pattern detected, initiate containment, and adjusted their jets subtly, forming a dynamic perimeter that restricted the hijackers' options without alarming passengers. Every slight tilt, every minor speed adjustment was coordinated with Maya's instructions. The Raptors acted as invisible extensions of her will, creating a controlled environment in which the hijackers could be manipulated and contained. The hijackers whispered urgently, frustration visible in their subtle gestures. Their plan had been carefully rehearsed, yet now hesitation had crept into their execution. Maya's calm presence amplified their doubt. She observed the taller man nodding a hesitation before reaching for a potential weapon. With a small nod, she tapped another coded sequence into her watch. The F-22s adjusted their vectors slightly, subtly pressuring the aircraft and creating the perception of external containment. The hijackers' options were shrinking, and they didn't even realize it. Passengers remained outwardly oblivious, yet Maya's subtle guidance ensured their safety. She shifted her gaze to a small group of children, quietly whispering instructions disguised as casual conversation. "Please move your backpacks closer to the seat." Every movement she suggested reinforced safety protocols without revealing her awareness. Every whisper was calculated to minimize panic and maximize control. Her calm aura acted as a buffer, stabilizing fear across the cabin. Outside, the F-22s executed minor adjustments, perfectly timed to correspond with Maya's internal instructions. Noted the precision of her micromanagement, it was as though the child had been controlling the airspace from inside the cabin. Exchanged a glance with, awe evident. "I've never seen anything like this," he whispered, "and she's 12. Back in seat 12F, Maya straightened, her pulse steady, every move deliberate. She knew the moment of true engagement was approaching. The hijacker's hesitation had created an opportunity, and she was ready to exploit it. Every passenger's life depended on her strategy, and she would not falter. Calm, observant, precise, she was no longer just a passenger. She was the orchestrator of survival, the invisible hand guiding the course of the aircraft's fate. The cabin remained deceptively calm, but tension had reached its peak. Outside, the F-22s awaited the next coded command, ready to act. Inside, Maya's mind calculated every possible scenario, every contingency. The confrontation had begun, and she was fully in control. Maya's pulse remained steady, but inside, a surge of adrenaline coursed through her veins. The hijacker's hesitation had grown palpable. She could see it in the way the taller man's hands trembled slightly when reaching for a device, and how his partner repeatedly glanced toward the cockpit. Every micro-movement was confirmation that her careful orchestration had begun to work. Tapping another coded sequence into her smartwatch, she transmitted a final directive: initiate Phase 3, passenger safety paramount, hijacker movement restricted, ready for containment. Above, the F-22 Raptors responded instantly, adjusted altitude and throttle with meticulous precision, forming a protective corridor around Flight 407, mirrored every movement, engines humming like the heartbeat of a predator circling its prey. The jet's invisible pressure created a controlled environment for the hijackers, limiting their options without alerting the passengers below. It was a silent, coordinated effort between a child operative in 12F and two of the most advanced fighter jets in the world. Inside the cabin, Maya moved subtly, maintaining the illusion of normalcy while guiding passengers toward safer positions. "Please, if you could shift your backpack slightly, thank you," she murmured to nearby adults, a casual gesture with critical intent. She adjusted her posture, leaning just enough to observe both the aisle and the galley, ensuring no hijacker movement went unnoticed. Every whisper, every gesture was deliberate. The hijackers, growing increasingly tense, remained unaware that they were now being manipulated with surgical precision. The taller hijacker made a move toward a rear exit, his hand hovering near a concealed object. Maya's fingers danced lightly across her smartwatch, sending a real-time update. The F-22s shifted slightly in formation, subtle enough to be invisible to the passengers but enough to restrict the hijackers' maneuvering room. The pressure from above created hesitation and confusion. The taller man froze mid-step, eyes darting nervously at his partner. The illusion of a broader, overwhelming force had begun to unravel their confidence. Flight attendants continued their routine, blissfully unaware of the extraordinary coordination happening around them. Maya's calm energy extended outward, keeping passengers steady. A small group of children fidgeted nearby, and she whispered softly, "It's all right, just stay seated, please." Her voice was gentle but authoritative, conveying confidence that masked the danger surrounding them. Every instruction she gave reinforced order and safety. The hijackers exchanged quick, frantic glances, whispering hurriedly. Their carefully rehearsed plan was now unraveling, every choice anticipated and countered by the invisible network orchestrating their containment. Maya tapped another microsequence: containment complete, initiate surrender protocol, and adjusted formation one last time, creating an inescapable presence above the plane without ever alerting passengers to the Guardians. Finally, the taller hijacker froze completely, confusion and fear evident in his eyes. His partner, seeing no options, lowered his hands. A silent surrender had been achieved. Passengers remained largely unaware of the near crisis unfolding around them, though a few murmurs of relief rippled through the cabin. Maya exhaled softly, maintaining calm as she sent one final signal to the pilots: situation contained, passenger safety confirmed. Outside, the F-22s adjusted their wings, engines humming softly as the tension dissolved. Allowed himself a small nod, impressed by the coordination of the child operative below. Glanced at the display, confirming that Flight 407 was secure. Echo 12F, exceptional work, murmured under his breath. The pilots had witnessed the precision, courage, and intellect of a 12-year-old girl who had turned a potential disaster into a flawlessly managed operation. Back in seat 12F, Maya relaxed slightly, returning to the guise of an ordinary passenger. The weight of her responsibility lifted ever so slightly, though awareness remained sharp. Passengers now sensed safety, though none suspected the invisible force that had orchestrated it. Flight 407 had survived a critical moment through the combination of calm, intelligence, and courage, all centered on the quiet girl in 12F. She had guided the plane through the storm of uncertainty and emerged unflinchingly triumphant. For the first time, a subtle sense of relief spread through the cabin. Passengers whispered to one another, unaware that their lives had been protected by a child operative whose brilliance had coordinated the skis above. The invisible crisis had been resolved, yet the hero remained unseen, blending seamlessly back into the ordinary world around her. Flight 407 touched down smoothly, tires kissing the tarmac with precise alignment. Inside the cabin, passengers exhaled collectively, their relief palpable yet unspoken. Flight attendants smiled, unaware of the extraordinary events that had unfolded beyond their perception. Maya, 12 years old and seemingly ordinary, remained calm, her backpack slung casually over one shoulder as if nothing had occurred. To the world outside, she was just another passenger disembarking. But the weight of what had transpired, the lives preserved, the hijackers contained, the invisible coordination between her and the F-22 pilots, rested quietly on her shoulders. In a secure hangar miles away, Captain and Lieutenant removed their helmets, exchanging a glance of profound respect. She did that, whispered, eyes fixed on the screen replaying the intercepted signals, nodded, disbelief mingled with awe. 12 years old, orchestrating a response like a seasoned strategist, and she never lost her calm. The pilots' training had prepared them for countless high-pressure scenarios, yet nothing had prepared them for a child operative commanding the skis with such precision. The rare call sign, Echo 12F, had proven more than symbolic, it had been a lifeline. Authorities on the ground debriefed the crew and gathered preliminary statements from passengers. News outlets would later report that Flight 407 had experienced a coordinated response to a potential threat, praising the professionalism of the pilots and crew. No one would learn the full story, not yet. The 12-year-old girl who had guided an entire military operation from a commercial seat remained anonymous. Maya stepped off the plane quietly, blending effortlessly with families and travelers, her calm mask perfectly intact. Only a few would ever know the truth behind her poised exterior. Maya's parents were waiting, concern etched on their faces, but they could not fully grasp the orchestration their daughter had conducted. They hugged her tightly, sensing her calm but unaware of the depth of her bravery. "Did you have a good flight?" her mother asked casually. Maya smiled faintly, her mind replaying the cabin, the pilots, the precise movements of the hijackers. "Yes," she said simply, "everything went fine." In reality, she had conducted an operation that would have challenged even the most experienced adults in security and crisis response. Later in her room, Maya reviewed the events quietly. Her smartwatch lay on her desk, a silent witness to her actions. She replayed the sequences, noting small adjustments she had made, decisions that had shifted the balance of power. A sense of satisfaction washed over her, tempered by humility. She had succeeded not for recognition, but because she had been trained to protect and act decisively. The lives of hundreds had been safeguarded, and she had done it without fanfare, without public acknowledgement, and without hesitation. Elsewhere, Captain and Lieutenant filed their after-action reports, nodding in the margins. Child operative coordination, unprecedented success. They knew beyond doubt that Flight 407 had survived because of her courage, intellect, and composure. Somewhere high above or hidden within secure networks, a 12-year-old girl had altered the course of a potential disaster, proving that heroism was not bound by age, size, or perception. Maya returned to school the next day, books in hand, backpack slung over her shoulders, blending once again into normal life. Her friends chatted about homework, weekend plans, and playground games. No one suspected that the quiet girl in seat 12F had commanded a military intervention from within a commercial airliner. Yet Maya carried with her a quiet confidence, an unspoken truth. Bravery is measured not by recognition, but by action in moments of extraordinary pressure. That night she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the day's events. The sky had been filled with invisible protectors, jets guided by her coded instructions, and the hijackers had been neutralized without bloodshed. A soft smile curved her lips. 12 years old, seemingly ordinary yet extraordinary in courage and intellect, Maya had faced a crisis few adults could have managed. Flight 407 had landed safely, and the world remained unaware of its youngest hidden hero. Maya's seat 12F had changed the course of events silently, flawlessly, and courageously, and that was enough.